Welcome back everyone to DreamHack Summer Hearthstone Grand Prix. I'm Raven and bringing you this next match is going to be Sol and Lothar as we have Slugg versus...
Fr0zen.
I was worried, you made me worried for a split second.
No,
there.
I did have an issue before this where I was looking at the deck list and I was just looking at JJ's thinking that it was Slugg against JJ. So as soon as you asked me that, I was okay, make sure you get it right this time, make sure you get it right this time. Yeah, it's Slugg versus Fr0zen. So.
Yeah, so this is going to be an interesting match as Slugg is, again, we've mentioned one of the more known players in this tournament, but he's getting really, really far. But now he has to take down Fr0zen, who's had some very impressive performances so far in this top 16 part of the bracket.
Especially with his rogue. 3-0'd his previous opponent Maverick and on back of Gazetan, of course, and the double conceals that he's running, which is not a, I would say, common pick right now in the deck list, right? Usually people tend to cut off the conceals completely or just play one. Interesting enough is that, for me at least, is the fact that people are not running Zariel anymore, right? It's been perceived as the go-to legendary, the new go-to legendary when it comes to rogues, but now it's kind of too slow.
Yeah, Zariel has kind of been relegated just to N'Zoth Rogue, really, as a feature, because it's so
Sometimes
powerful in
even
that
right
deck.
there.
Obviously, it's a death route. You can also get Shadow Step a lot of the time. You have the Shadow Step Toxin, and then suddenly your N'Zoth is nuts. You just go ham with it, save a coin from Tomb Pillager or something. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the matchups for Miracle Rogue now, they're actually like very tempo-based and not as much combo-based. So you want to just be slamming like big, efficient dude every turn, and Zariel just doesn't really do that.
Yeah, and speaking of the rogue, it is going to be Fr0zen's first deck versus Slugg's Hunter, and I'm going to leave it to you guys to enjoy the match.
Thank you, Raven. So it is going to be one of the standout decks of the tournament, if not in performance, at least by curiosity, which is Slugg's Hunter deck, which is including such gems as Princess Huran, Gladiator's Longbow, Dreadscales in there as well. This is all over the shop, this Hunter list, but he swears by it.
I can understand the Princess.
Yeah,
she's so great against Druid of the Claws. An example.
Sure. Yeah.
That's the one thing, but
big old 6/5.
The Gladiator's Longbow is something I have yet to see how great it is, I would say. Because, I mean, in this match, it was actually just 10 damage to the face.
Yeah, I mean, it's flexible as well. You can use it as that Pyroblast over 2 turns, but also it kills every minion in the deck. Like, every minion has 4 or 5 health. You can use it, you know, if it's a tightly contested game in the mid game, you can just use it to take out 2 Tomb Pillagers or a Pillager and an Azure Drake, something like that. So
we can safely say that if you look for a matchup that the Gladiator's Longbow should shine, this is the one.
Should be. I think in his post-game interview, he specifically commented that it was great against Rogue. So hopefully it gets drawn, because there's that opportunity that just gets stuck in the deck and we just never find out. So hopefully it does get drawn and we get to see how big of an impact Gladiator's Longbow has on this matchup.
That's correct. And seems like Slugg is actually having a good draw. Like, he did get it 2-drop. Turn 3 is maybe not that great, but developing a trap is never bad, especially when you play against a rogue who sometimes would like to use that dagger just to, poke that hunter just 2 damage over 2 turns. But he can't do that when the Bertrab will be played on turn 3. And now he's kind of in a spot where he needs to decide, would I rather kill the giant toad right now with the backstab, or should I wait and combine that backstab if I top deck an agent for the next turn so I can kill another drop from the hunter, or just wait for the Violet Teacher, but his health totals are just way too low against the hunter in general, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that long a wait for the Violet Teacher. If he doesn't backstab this turn, he has coin Violet Teacher backstab next turn, and he has a prep, so he can potentially prep out a spell if he gets it, even prep the Fan of Knives. And that's what this play is setting up right here, right? He's going to see if another minion comes down, say Animal Companion. This is going to be a 4 health minion most of the time. Huffer's actually, sure, okay. I mean, it gets the damage in, but it's still vulnerable to backstab. But let's say it was Misha, then you have coin Violet Teacher, backstab the Misha, prep Fan of Knives, and you use your remaining dagger charge to hit into the 1 remaining health of the Misha. So
basically
this
the same
play,
outcome.
Exactly the same outcome. So this play was set up in advance, exactly with the expectation of Animal Companion coming up. That's exactly what happened. So Fr0zen will be feeling rewarded right now. But as you said, there has been a bit of a beating taken in the early game. Already taken 10 damage.
That's correct. 20 health left for Fr0zen. But at the same time now, every single one of those 1/1s will be perceived as healing for his own hero, because they will take the beating instead of him. So they don't represent like 2 damage. They actually may even represent 3 or 4 if they will trade up. with a minion, and he will be constantly getting those if he will draw spells, which we know is kind of... It is a obvious choice when it comes to Rogue, right? There's a lot of spells in the deck.
There sure are. Even though we saw JJ's kind of minion-heavy version earlier on, where he was kept trying to activate these Gadgetzan cycle turns and just kept hitting minion after minion. This is a more spell-heavy list from Fr0zen, but he has the opportunity here. He can choose to tempo out if he wants to with just a Cold Blood and a 3-drop minion. He can also take the efficient trade into the Wolf, which would remove Kodo targets from the board. Then he has the decision with his Farseer. He can choose to either heal up his own life total to stabilize that way, or just the more likely play, which is retaining the value on the board, healing up the Violet Teacher back to full. But looks like he is going to take the tempo play here with the Cold Blood.
I think he will go for the Agent, trade with a 1-1, keep the 3-1 on the board, and then kill the 2 1-1s with his Violet Teacher and the 1-1. Interesting. Because he would have a 3-1 on board, right? And 1 less 1-1, or have a 3-4 Violet Teacher. What do you think about that?
So you want to SI the Wolf and then trade with the 1-1,
Yeah.
and then you poke. But then what goes into the second remaining 1-1?
You have a Violet Teacher.
Okay, so you're going to take 1 damage on the Violet Teacher to preserve a 3-1 on the... But yeah, that's probably better overall, right? Just thinking about it. It's one of those tricky states to rebuild in my mind, because, you know, 1-1s have been appearing and disappearing as all the spells have been cast. But yeah, the way you describe it, it sounds like that would have created a better board state, but it's... consideration around things like Unleash the Hounds as well. I'm not entirely sure if Slugg has Unleash in this deck, but he does have, I'll tell you what he does have, which I mentioned at the start, and that's Dreadscale.
Oh yeah, right. Dreadscale is a thing that you need to be careful, but at the same time he would have had 1 less 1-1 if you wouldn't even want to sacrifice one instead.
Yeah, but he's already invested the value of his 3-1 that way, whereas against Dreadscale he would lose the 3-1 essentially for free to the Battlecry.
No point in discussing this right now.
Yeah.
So let's go with our lives, and it's 10-6 for Slugg. He just did draw the Unleash the Hounds a turn delayed to get some benefits from it. But he has an option to just quickshot the Agent and play the Bear Trap this turn, squeeze in additional 2 damage, because it feels like now every single turn, ideally you would like to use the hero power, because that just shortens the lifespan of the Rogue by a small, small margin. But if that's add up, if it is adding up, you can finish the game pretty quickly.
Yeah, and let's not forget, we talked about it, at any point he is capable of drawing a 7-mana Pyroblast over 2 turns with that Gladiator's Longbow. So if he can get that life total down approaching 10, then he has that as a possible win condition if he feels like he can win the race that way. So damage is definitely relevant. He's definitely struggling in a fight for the board, so the damage is an alternate win condition that he can start to set up. But Fr0zen right now, considering his options, not a great turn in hand. He can poke with the dagger, then deal with the bear on board efficiently, just develop a Tomb Pillager. This seems fine, but he is significantly weakening his Azure Drake. And again, you know you're vulnerable to those Dreadscales, Unleash the Hounds, etc. that are in the deck.
I don't know if I like this decision, because now you're not only exposed to the Dreadscale, as you said, but also the Unleash the Hound, and the Houndmaster is just asking to be played, right? You get a trade with the Azure Drake, you put a 4/3 that can trade with the Tomb Pillager. If not, then it's still a great threat. And you deal 3 damage to your opponent face. Yeah,
what I will say is that in this situation, if I'm Fr0zen, I'm not going to play around a specific 2-card combo in my opponent's 3-card hand plus a top deck. So I don't, Unleash the Hound's Houndmaster, or, Unleash the Hound's Kill Command is a similar effect, but 1 Kill Command has already been used. So I think like Dreadscale is a fair consideration in that fact, but Dreadscale you still get to keep the Tomb Pillager on board. So I don't necessarily think you're supposed to play around 2-card combos in that situation. I don't mind the aggressive line that he took with the board development.
I would just like to drop the guards, onto 6, not attacking. Just cancel the attack with the Azure Drake and benefit from having the guards in him for turn 7 when you have already 1 spell in your hand. And you cycle through the almost entire deck if you're lucky.
But any play that you're scared of that kills your board there, the Tomb Pillager Drake board, also kills a Gadgetzan Auctioneer, right?
And not really. I mean, then
Unleash
he needs to trade both. And
right, yeah. Unleash the Hound's Houndmaster still would have killed the Azure Drake, and it would have been 4/3 versus... sorry, would have still killed the Gadgetzan, then it would have been 4/3 versus a Drake on the board.
But then you have an answer with Tomb Pillager and Shadow Strike on the next turn.
Sure.
And you're still ahead of board, right?
Sure.
And you have 2 guides.
Yeah, you do have a spare, and that is important. I'll definitely give you that one.
Kodo has no impact in this matchup.
Does not.
So
Poor old Kodo Baggins.
It dies to the Tomb Pillager, which is on 1 HP, so it seems like a great trade. But there's also an option to just still have the Tomb Pillager on board, use the Fan of Knives, and trade with the Farseer, so you have a just bigger attack minion on board, which will stack up faster. Now the question is, do I want to have the coin this turn, so I can play Guided Hand and the Fan of Knives anyway to just cycle through? Seems like he's going for that.
Yeah, if the Gadgetzan's coming down, I'm sure we're about to see this direct trade. I mean, just on the surface, it's a 5-1 into a 3-5, right? Like,
yeah,
it's hard to argue with that. So, again,
exactly.
Dreadscale is still a card that's in the deck, so the value of a 5-1 is heavily mitigated. Cycles through, picks up the Deadly Poison, which is nice. Chooses not to take the Redagger value, hoping to cycle through into some more draws. Does get there with the Eviscerate, just going to fire it off at the face. And this is the big power turn that he needed. Second Deadly now, so damage ramping up very, very quickly for Fr0zen.
He is at 12 damage. Sorry, 12 HP. Interesting that Fr0zen did not attack with his weapon. He has a second Deadly Poison, right?
Yes.
So, by not choosing to attack right now, he is practically saying, for 1 mana, I'm adding 2 damage. Because he doesn't have to Redagger, and the game will not last for 3 turns anyway.
Yes, but what this potentially lets him do is gives him more outs at just ending the game next turn. If his Auctioneer lives, then he can just straight off start cycling for 1 mana. That makes more draws like Leroy available to him and still be playable. So I'm totally fine with this. You're not going to need the value of all 3 charges of that.
What I wanted just to bring to viewers' attention is the fact that Fr0zen knows that this game will not last.
Right, exactly.
So he needs to have the bigger damage, access to bigger damage chunks right now, or just the draws for the, in example, saps that he needs as well.
Yeah. So SI7 Agent is drawn. That's another source of damage. So just sap by itself is starting to be important. There is that Leroy that we spoke about. And the Blood Mage is going to come down. Fan of Knives enables the trade into the Leok here, which means he has 3, 8, 11 damage going face. The Eviscerate comes out for 5.
God,
the prep is
prep.
lethal. Yeah, the prep is 100% lethal in this situation.
Incredible.
Yeah, this is the face, the 3 from the Farseer, the 5 from the Dagger. That preparation spares him the mana to add the SI7 Agent to it, and that, by my count, is Xaxes.
Yep, that's exactly 10. So Slugg goes 0-1 down. His Hunter did not have time to get to the Gladiator's Longbow.
It's very true. But don't you love it when a plan comes together? We talked about the importance of starting his turn with that cheap cycle of the Deadly Poison without having to Redagger at the start. He exactly used all of his mana to exactly kill his opponent. So if he'd have used that Dagger charge at the start of the turn and then had to Redagger at the start of this turn to put up the Deadly Poison, wouldn't have got there.
Yep, definitely true. Very well played by Fr0zen.
Yep.
And I mean, usually Hunter's like the really big problematic matchup for the Rogue, but not anymore, right? Even without the access to like 2 or 3 even sources of healing, right? So it's not that, it didn't look that bad in the beginning. And now we are going to a really worse matchup for the Rogue.
Yeah. This is a matchup that hurts as the Rogue. If you're going to win it, you have to find some way to counter-punch early. You need a big swing on the board with prep. You need a big early Van Cleef. You need to get a minion to stick and just start jamming Cold Bloods on it. Like, you can't just play the removal game. There's a ton of removal in the deck, but you are going to take incremental amounts of damage each turn that you spend removing the Shaman's minions. So you need to set up your counter-punch on the board as early as possible and just try and race the Shaman.
Correct. Well, for Shaman, the Doomhammer is key, but you don't want to have it in the opening hand if you already have a 2-drop, because you don't want to. Well, actually, maybe you don't have access to coin. Turn 2 is Flame Juggler. Turn 3 might be Totem Golem. Feral Spirit is maybe not that important to have in the opening hand. What do you think about keeping Flame Juggler and Totem Golem mulling away Feral Spirits? Yeah,
Feral Spirits is the awkward card here, but at the same time, Flame Juggler just isn't all that aggressive in terms of some of the things that you could pick up. So yeah, I mean, my 2 potential mulligans there that I'd be deciding between were what you suggested, just keeping the double 2-drop, just filling out a curve using the Overload, and what Slugg ended up going with, which was just keeping the Totem Golem and going for more aggression, which he gets rewarded with picking up the Tunnel Trog.
Definitely rewarded. He has the, first of all, he has the Flame Tongue Totem, which is perfect with the curve, because he had a 1-drop, 2-drop, into Overload for the exact next 2-drop, and he has the Doomhammer.
He certainly
which
does.
Is a let's say like that. It's not a single coffin. Sorry, it's a single nail to the coffin. It's like 8 nails to the coffin in 4 turns.
Yep. And double sap picked up now. Are we desperate enough already that we're going to be sapping one of these minions? I think we probably will. Now that we have the spare, so we don't just auto-lose the game to a 7-7 coming down in the next couple of turns, I think it's fine to just mitigate some damage here. Your hand does not survive for very long right now, so you need to buy as much time as you can to push through.
That's correct. Unfortunately for Fr0zen, every single time he is sapping a minion with Overload, that Slugg is kind of like, okay, thank you. It's not that horrible.
Sure.
I just lost. He lost because of that sap. He lost 2 damage.
Yes.
But the rogue lost entire turn and a card advantage.
Very true. I mean, yeah, theoretically, yeah, he lost 2 damage. Like, I understand the maths behind that, but also there would have been another minion developed this turn, right? If the, if the Totem Golem didn't come down. So actually, over the long term, you're saving a lot more than 2 damage with that sap.
Second Totem Golem. So he forfeited the Flamer Faceless. I can understand that because of how fast was that sap played, right? That might tell that his opponent has a second sap.
Wait, no, he still plays Faceless next turn. He's overloaded for 1 on 5 mana.
What? Yeah, this is the turn 4.
Yeah.
Never
So
mind.
what he's actually sacrificing is the Doomhammer. So it's almost the opposite. Like, he's deciding he doesn't need to Doomhammer next turn because he can just play a 7-7. And since he's seen a sap, that 7-7 might carry him.
I got confused by the fact that it was the second Totem Golem, which was actually the third.
Yes. The third Totem Golem of this game. And none of which have come from Tuskar Totemic.
This way, Fr0zen is able to kill the entire board, but he is at 16 HP, and that Doomhammer is actually lethal.
It is, but if the Flame Wreath comes down this turn, the Doomhammer is not playable next turn.
Yep, that's correct.
And
And there's the second sap.
Now, there's a window. It's a small window, but it's a window. There's a 4-4 on board versus nothing. There's a Conceal, there's more aggressive minions. So there is a potential to start racing here. Rogue ramps up damage extremely quickly if you let them get going. But don't get me wrong, it is a very, very small window because there is a lot of damage to come back. It's a crack, yeah. And if you play a 7-7 back down here, it doesn't interfere with your Doomhammer curve. You can still play Doomhammer next turn now. And both saps are gone, so you know this needs to be dealt with honestly with damage.
So what are the options? The perfect answer is Falnos into Eviscerate and Backstab, an example.
Sure.
That's one of the answers that usually seen against handlocks with their Mountain Giants.
Shadow Strike SI7 agent is pretty great as well.
Yep.
There's only one Shadow Strike in Fr0zen's list, though.
So the 7-7 will just get ignored. And the Conceal was played, it was not played deliberately because he wants to trick Slugg to trade with his minions.
I'll just leave these here. If you want to make the mistake of sending your 7-7 into this, then that's fine. But since you just have lethal, that seems unlikely.
Yep, the Lava Burst and Lightning Bolt and Abusive Sergeant is a huge burst from the hand. 7-7 just adds a foot there in the face of the Rogue. So that was a quick match, but at the same time, it is a matchup that is heavily favoring the Shaman. Not Shaman, and that's it. 1-1.
Yeah, not much else to say about it. I mean, the opening hand just wasn't powerful enough. There was no backstab, no SI7 agent, no preps to really tempo out early. Yeah, it just didn't get there. So here we go with everyone's favorite matchup in the game, Hearthstone Heroes of Warcraft, Shaman versus Shaman.
People just need to learn to ban Shamans, right? Then we won't see that.
I'm not sure who I saw propose on Twitter that the best tournament format is 4-deck Last Hero Standing with 1 ban, but Shaman is just tournament banned. Like, you can't bring it at all. I was like, yeah, I like that. Let's go with that as a format.
That will also make the life of Blizzard employees easier. Now they don't have to develop Shaman at all.
Yeah, seems good. But Tunnel Trog's in hand for both players, but the Tunnel Trog gets followed up slightly more aggressively by Slugg's hand, but Fr0zen does have the initiative of going first here, which makes the Tunnel Trog backed up with the Lightning Bolt potentially quite strong, especially if he can pick up another 1-drop to come down with it on the following turn.
Oh yeah, definitely correct. Like, you know, we're telling here just jokes about the Shaman versus Shaman matchup, but it is very skilled matchup if it's close to, like, if both players have similar hands.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
There's a lot of decisions, and we have seen that between RDU and Hoi in that mirror match. That was very, very difficult match to play.
Yeah, and even going back yesterday, there was some intricate Shaman mirrors back then as well. So it's definitely not, you know, a brain dead mirror matchup. That's not what we're trying to say. It's just it's such a common matchup. You see it so much that it's kind of easy to become kind of jaded with it. But the Totem Golem is going to come out here. He's stolen the initiative back essentially by trading removal spells with his opponent using the coin. So both 1-mana Tunnel Trogs got answered by the respective 1-mana removals, Lightning Bolt and Rockbiter weapon, and now the initiative's passed all the way back to the Totem Golem down on an empty board.
I would love to see the Flametongue Totem this turn. Just because you have the access to Argent Horse Rider for turn 4.
Yes.
So you have an option to kill whatever will be played on board with that Horse Rider. So let's say Tusker Totemic will be played with a very lucky Totem Golem. Just use your Argent Horse Rider, trade with both, right?
Even in this case of the Flame Wreath Faceless, he would have Charging Horse Rider for 4 plus the Lightning Bolt to take it out perfectly. So I'm with you. I would have loved to see the Flame Tongue there. It looks a little weird in the sense that, you know, your Flame Tongue to buff your Totem Golem, and then you're probably going to trade with the Spell Power Totem anyway. Like, it looks weird,
definitely.
It feels weird, but in terms of what it sets up for the future, it's beneficial. You know, he does deal with the 7/7 now still, but it's nowhere near as beneficial as it would have been the other way around.
Yeah. He still has the access to Horse Rider on turn 5 with the Totem, so his thing from below will get the 2 mana as well. But I still would like to see that. Well, anyway, we're going to Fr0zen right now, and he needs to go with Tusker Totemic. What he will get, that was not bad.
Yeah,
Could have been worse.
Definitely could. Any one of the unique effect totems is definitely appreciated off Tusker Totemic, but even Totem Golem then isn't necessarily better than this because it just has the free trade with the opponent's Totem Golem, 5/4 into 3/4. So Manatide Totem to dig through his deck, picking up the damage now of the Rockbiter with that Doomhammer is definitely something that will make his eyes light up. But we saw a previous series being lost, I believe, because of the greed of wanting to pair Doomhammer and Rockbiter together in this exact matchup and not using Rockbiter as a removal tool.
Yep, definitely correct. I mean, in this matchup, I feel like you have to just kill every single minion that your opponent is playing. You play around the Flametongue Totem. We have discussed this yesterday, I believe, that the fact that the Flametongue Totem has like a ridiculous, really ridiculous win rate when you play it on the board, and then it has a really small win rate. I'm just getting caught off guard here by that trade. almost.
It's just a tentative point, right? Like, face? Question mark? Like, no.
What I was getting
no,
to,
sir, you trade.
What I was getting to is the fact that when you play Flametongue Totem and you trade with it, your win rate is getting like tremendously up.
Sure.
And the other way around, if it just sits there awkwardly the whole time in your hand, because you don't have any kind of minions that can benefit from it, right? And this is what this matchup comes to. It's essentially a board control matchup till the point when someone plays Doomhammer and Rockbiter at the same turn.
Yes.
Or just the 7/7 smashes face.
That works too, but the reason I would have been particularly surprised at the face attack from Slugg on that turn is that his hand says board control. His hand doesn't say damage. Like, sure, if your hand is, you know, Doomhammer Rockbiter at that point, then yeah, maybe 5 damage to face probably gets you there most times. But his hand is just efficient at dominating the board right now and pushing repetitive damage with his minions. So.
But it creates a small bluff as well, right? You can just say to opponent, maybe I have that Doomhammer.
Good point. Yeah, sure.
Double, sorry, not double. Rockbiter weapon on the Argent, on the hero and the Argent Horse Rider creates a beneficial trade for Fr0zen, but he's still kind of behind on board after this turn. If that Flame Juggler hits, and there's a 50-50 for it.
Yeah, he can just play out his hand here, and even if the Flame Juggler, like, you can play the Flame Juggler first, and even if the Flame Juggler hits the Flame Tongue Totem, then you can then hold back the Abusive Sergeant if you want to go that way. But he's going to play it first. This gives him the straight up 50-50, and that allows him to play his entire hand here, develop the 5/5 Taunt. It's not the hugest 50-50 in the world because you're putting that big 5/5 Taunt in the way anyway, but still, he would have been pretty happy to win it.
Definitely correct. It's still not looking great for Fr0zen. He had the option to get back on the board in the previous turn, but now that thing from below, a 5/5 minion, is actually very awkward to deal with. he pays a huge price.
Feels vaguely unpleasant.
Yeah. 7 damage to the face this 10 just to clear 2 minions, and you're still behind on board. That can't feel good. At least Slugg doesn't get a 7/7 from the top of the deck, so that's something.
Tunnel Trog is actually kind of a whiff in this situation. So Fr0zen having now established some element of board control. You know, he has the weapon, which represents being able to deal with this board of minions over the next couple of turns. If he can pick up some sort of stability hero power from Finley, or say Mage, which helps him address this board state a little bit quicker, then if he can draw some more impactful cards over the next few turns, if he can pick up things from below and something along those lines, then suddenly he might be able to come back into this game.
Oh, I don't like this. Ooh. I mean, you have seen the second Flamestone Totem, but you did not see Pharaoh Spirits yet, and you did not see as the second Argent Horse Rider, right?
What about Abusive Sergeants? How many of those have we seen?
I think none.
So there's a lot of cards that potentially punish you for this.
Mm-hmm.
Flame Juggler, though, doing what Flame Juggler does and hitting face with remarkable consistency. So Finley is going to come down, and this is a really important discover right now for Fr0zen.
Well, Shapeshift is not bad.
It's okay.
It heals for 1, and it adds +2 attack when you have the Doomhammer.
Yeah, it also means he can take out Flame Juggler Tunnel Trog this turn, as opposed to having to take out the weaker minions if he wants to continue going down the board control line.
Definitely correct. It's like you know what's funny? It's like the mix of those two hero powers that you have on the left and the right.
Yes.
You take the steady shot because you have 2 damage with the Doomhammer, and you take half of the lesser heal.
I mean, I can understand the reasoning between you know, most of these picks here. Definitely Priest, definitely Druid. The Hunter seems a bit ambitious in this situation, but he is going to go for the Druid and go for the exact play that I talked about, which is taking out the 2 biggest minions on the board. And now, this is the situation I was talking about. He has the board. So this is a line where if your opponent keeps bricking and you start picking up some impactful draws from your deck, you've given yourself an out. You've given yourself a window or a crack that you can edge through. And he's just going to be relying on his deck to draw some power for him right now.
And, well, this is not an easy decision. I think that the Lightning Bolt should be used to kill the Flame Juggler right now, because, as you said, it comes down to the board control, right? Even a top deck Doomhammer next turn doesn't guarantee you the win, right? Unless you keep the Lightning Bolt.
And he is going to hold on to the Lightning Bolt, which means Slugg is a dreamer.
Interesting, because how much... Well, he has also the second lava burst, right?
Yes.
Still in the deck, so there are some options.
But your opponent is potentially going up to 9 this turn, depending on how he decides to trade here. So Lightning Bolt, Lava Burst is only 8. You need a Spell Damage Totem to go along with that.
Yep. This might be not easy. So the Doomhammer draw is the perfect draw in this situation.
It is, but you are taking 3 damage this turn. And then on the following turn, your opponent has 6 more, plus, so that's 8, 12, 15, 18 more damage next turn at a bare minimum. So your clock is actually not very long in this situation. That is a Doomhammer, though.
No way.
Yes, it is.
No way. Well, that happens. Okay, so Slugg is actually rewarded for his choice. Previous turn, well played, right? He had this out and he waited for it.
Yeah, so the damage is pushed through. Lightning Bolt is going to come down. I mean, Rock Biter weapon, is that lethal on the backswing here? It would be 10 damage, 12 damage just from the hero, and then 14, 16, 19, 22. So even the Rock Biter isn't lethal.
No, you need to keep the Lightning Bolt. Wait, what? That makes no sense, right? He had lethal next turn with the Lightning Bolt.
Yes.
And now he doesn't have the lethal.
They miscount the damage. So 2, 4, 7, 8, 10, 12, plus the Flame Titan 4, 16.
Okay, well, the thing from below kind of shuts him down anyway. But if he gets a Rock Biter weapon now, then he still doesn't have lethal.
He does not. In fact, there is no single card in his deck that gives him lethal, I believe. Particularly not Doomhammer number 2.
Yep.
And that was a very, very timid play from Slugg, and he equips a second Doom Hammer and then just forgets to concede, starts writing down notes. Fr0zen's wondering what's going on, does eventually give up the concede. So
that was a really peculiar turn.
So I think I did miscount. I lost track of exactly how much damage there was, but I think exactly the Rockbiter draw would have been lethal if he'd have picked it up. But that is a hell of a world to play around because he's already used one.
And he saved the Lightning Bolt because he wanted to get lethal with it, right? That's the only reason I see to keep it in the hand.
I think so too, yeah.
So he basically gave up the chance to win the game because if he kept the Lightning Bolt, the only thing that can save your opponent is actually a taunt. And his opponent didn't have Shaman Hero Power anymore, so he could not get the Taunt Totem. So the only possibilities were to get Tusker Totemic into a Taunt Totem or the Thing from below. And that's it.
Yeah.
Otherwise you win.
It's very, very peculiar decision, but the Shaman is left up. The good news for Slugg, sorry, is that he does have this Zoo to fall back on, which is a strong matchup historically against the aggressive Shaman. There's just too much board dominance early on, but this is a decent-looking opening from Slugg. From Fr0zen with the Tunnel Trog Coin Lightning Bolt. This is one of the ways you can win this game. And again, Slugg with the surprises in his deck list. There's something I wanted to talk about. The Bilefin Tidehunter is a card that was experimented with early on in the new Zoo. The effectiveness of 1/1 taunts is pretty high, but still not a usual card that you see in the common standard Zoo list these days.
That's correct, but at the same time, it's very valuable here. It's hard to remove both minions with for the Shaman, right? Because if that would be just a 3/2 minion that can trade with the Tunnel Trog, sure, but then a single Rockbiter or Lightning Bolt just deals with it, like with the Flame Imp. If it's split into 2 minions, then not only it soaks damage because it has Taunt, but then it also trades back. So very interesting choice in this metagame. I feel like it's a great card, especially in this matchup.
So now, decision time. Argent Squire or Tunnel Trog number 2? What's the plan?
I feel like Argent Squire is way better.
So
it gives you possibilities of trading with Abusive Sergeant next turn.
Are you playing Abusive Sergeant next turn is my question, though. Because you have 3 mana and a Tusker Totemic.
That depends. You can also top deck a Rockbiter, or Lightning Bolt. So you have 3 outs to complete a 3 mana turn anyway. And you have to count what your opponent will do with his 3 mana. So what are the most common plays for 3 mana in Zoo?
In-game boss. Darkshire Council.
Exactly. So do you want to play that Abusive Sergeant then on that turn? Because it's kind of redundant, right?
Yep. And for all of those reasons and many more, I like Trog number 2 here. Also, the other reason to go over, of course, Argent Squire would look relatively competitive against that 2/1 on the board, but that 2/1 is going into one of your minions and dying pretty much 100% of the time this turn. So there's no need to consider that. So yeah, all things considered, I like Tunnel Trog number 2. There's no reason to go with the Squire here, because as you said, you want to pair together that Squire and the Abusive Sergeant, and that happens on a turn that is not the following turn, where you're almost certainly slamming Tusker Totemic.
So now let's see, this is not an easy decision for Slugg. This Forbidden Ritual gives him a 3 1/1s, which can benefit from Abusive Sergeant next turn, because most likely at least one of them will be alive.
Yes.
Right. If he goes for the Knife Juggler and Abusive Sergeant, he's able to kill the fresh Trog, but it's then you leave the 2/2 alive that trades with the Knife Juggler. Is not the best option. Okay, never mind. He got it solved.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the perfect outcome. Weakening that Tunnel Trog on board down to 2 health, so it doesn't have a competitive trade on the board, and being able to take out the bigger one so your Knife Juggler isn't directly contested. But Feral Spirits is a pretty nice draw here for the immediacy, but this is where you have to take the overload into account, because now you're delaying your Tusker Totemic, which is a very potentially powerful card in its own right, for another couple of turns. But you do have a strong 2 mana play next turn with the Abusive Sergeant and the Argent Squire.
Correct. It's not bad, because now we can trade with the 4-drop, which is an ideal scenario for Fr0zen. He wants to get rid of that 4/4 before it gets a Defender of Augurs on top of it.
Yes.
Because that 5 HP is problematic if you don't have a Lava Burst. So you want to get rid of that as soon as possible. And now Slugg has an option to refill his board, which is great against that board from Shaman.
And even more so, you've just drawn a Direwolf Alpha, so even if a huge minion comes down on this turn from the Shaman, you have the ability to daisy chain your attacks Unfortunately, there has been no totems played this turn, so that 5/5 that might look fairly appealing is unplayable since it's still at its fair and balanced 6 mana cost.
So this is also something that kind of was influenced by the fact that the Task Timing was not played on turn 3 instead of the Feral Spirits.
Does pick up Taunt Totem, though, which is theoretically a big deal. We can see that the Direwolf Alpha will have something to say about that, so I'm interested now as to how much Fr0zen is going to respect the board control here. You know, the Divine Shield into a 1/1 is the worst value you can ever get out of a Divine Shield. It's just as bad as it gets, and 2/1 into a 1/1 feels like a bad trade, but how much do you respect how much better an individual 1/1 is for Zoo than just, you know, a factual 1/1? Because anytime you play, you know, 10 to 12 buffs in your deck, suddenly every single 1/1 on the board represents way higher value than just what it says on the card.
Yep, definitely correct. Like, there are 2 cards that will influence this decision. Defender of Argus and Direwolf Alpha.
Yep.
Both of them buff multiple minions. In this case, it's even, for Direwolf Alpha, it's even more beneficial, because first of all, he trades with the Taunt Totem just with one of these tentacles, those tentacles, and then he trades with another one with Task Totemic, and then he can kill as well the Healing Totem and kill the Abusive Surgeons, which is nuts.
It really is, yeah, and like pick your poison this turn for Slugg, honestly. He has the Defender of Argus as well, so he has both of those options that you talked about. Defender of Argus, of course, more useful on a following turn if there is ever any threat of lethal, because this is the turn where you pretty much dominate the board forever. So the out for your Shaman opponent becomes start relentlessly going face, and in that case, that's when you want to have a Defender of Argus ready to lock them out.
Correct. And the Flame Imp, I would have definitely played the Flame Imp right now. You have Defender of Argus.
Yes.
You can defend your health points by playing that card.
Absolutely. I don't think it was a matter of whether he was playing the Flame Imp, it was a matter of positioning, because he has the Direwolf to consider now in terms of the Daisy Chain buffs, but he also has Argus positioning to think about, and those two quite often conflict with each other in terms of where you want to put minions.
Correct. Good point. You would like to probably tone up the Possessed Villager as well, right?
Yes.
Because then it has to be traded in, and you gain 1 damage anyway.
Yeah, and that's kind of the premium source of the conflict, is that you want Death Rattles on the extreme edges so they don't interrupt that buff Daisy Chain. Yeah. But for Argus, you want your Death Rattle in the middle, because that gives you the maximum options of what else to Argus with the Death Rattle. So definitely some difficult positional concerns for Slugg on that turn, but he chooses just to value the Direwolf first and foremost. And since there's a 5/5 coming down this turn, that looks like a good decision from his part.
The position was even more important before Standard hit, with Standard hit the table, because of the fact that there was the egg from Naxxramas, right? And that had to be almost always had to be played on the edges of the battlefield.
Yeah, Void Terror too was another positional concern that you brought in terms of which minions you were going to want to devour to get the buffs. So, ooh, Direwolf number 2.
Okay, so now the position is even more important. He can go for Defender of... Now, this is the thing. You can trade with your Flame Imp if you play Defender of Argus and the Direwolf Alpha on it, but you don't want to lose the Taunt right now when it comes to trades. So you want to trade with other minions so you can gain the Taunt to soak up the potential damage from the Shaman. Because it's still very important to be just safe from the range of Doomhammer.
Yep, so he gets the positioning right in the end. I think the other consideration was the Direwolf on the left-hand side between the Tentacle and the Possessed Villager, using that 3 and 2 over that side to go into the 5/5. But this one works out better because of the eventual Argus positioning that gets him the 2 sizable taunts on the board.
And now the 7/7 is not that threatening. Right? You just ignore it and start the race. This is the moment, I think, when you have to start racing.
Yeah, unless you find something that presents you with a way to value trade into that 7/7, you know, Power Overwhelming could make a mess of it very quickly. Then, yeah, I kind of agree with you, especially now you've just picked up a 3rd taunt, because, you know, Doomhammer, if it comes out, does get rid of one of those taunts immediately, so they're not as much protection as you might think, and he is, in fact, going to respect the trade.
Interesting.
I really don't mind this. I think I would have tilted more towards it if I hadn't have just drawn the 3rd taunt, because now you do have a lot of protection from that 7/7 connecting with your face, but I guess he's looking at the respective life totals and saying, you know what, 29's a long way away. This 7/7 might actually have time to get value with a couple of trades on the board. Double Lava Burst is not what Fr0zen was going to be looking for here.
Well, he can roll the Air Power Totem, deal 6 damage this turn. he only gets... Actually, he's not getting that much damage in the upcoming turns. 3, 6, 8, 9 damage. Would you consider maybe just lava bursting the Direwolf Alpha? It actually gets 5 damage from the board.
It does remove 5, yeah, but I mean, what outs are you playing for at that point? Because even a Doomhammer pickup, you know, you're kind of Doomhammering into a 2-3, or you're lava bursting a 2-3 and ended up Doomhammering face. You're not even going to have the mana to do all that on the next turn. So I don't know. At the same time, I mean, what win condition are you setting up this way with holding on to both lava bursts? It doesn't feel like double lava burst face is going to be the winning line this game, but maybe that's the out Fr0zen sees. Maybe he's going to live to be a genius. Who knows? Direwolf pushes through. Like you said, does still have a couple of turns on the clock, but the fact that this is an aggressive turn from the Zoo, Darkshire Councilman and a Brown Bronzebeard coming down, so high potential damage output on the following turn, means that this might just be the last turn that he has to live.
The problem is like those two...
There it is.
Those two lava bursts, because of the fact that they weren't used, at least one wasn't used in the previous turn, you don't have enough mana in the 2 turns that you probably have to play everything.
Yeah.
Especially with your top pick next turn. So I would love to have see that one of those lava bursts being used in the previous turn because of the fact that Overload also kicks in.
Now we have outs. If we're not dead, and there is 4, 6, 7 damage on the board, so he'd have to find 10, which is a big ask. Now, Rockbiter is lethal. So he has, through the way he's engineered it, set himself up with an out, which is the best you can ask in this matchup. You know, if you give the aggro shaman in this matchup, you say, okay, you can play a matchup against Zoo and you'll be in a position on turn 10 where you have a draw to win the game. Like, most of the time you'd say, yeah, sure, I'll take that situation, because this is a really unfavored matchup.
Yeah, correct. And he has 2 Rockbiters left in his deck.
I believe so, yeah. I don't think we've seen one used, yeah.
That is actually a good chance to get it. And does it make a difference for Slugg if he taps this turn? I think it does, because there's also one Lightning Bolt left.
Yeah, the card being held in hand could be Rockbiter, it could be Lightning Bolt. So from Slugg's perspective,
oh my god,
there
he got
is!
it!
Wow!
He got the Rockbiter weapon from the top of the deck to finish off that semi-final 3-1. Shaman takes it on the back of the Doomhammer.
Sometimes it's just your day, and Fr0zen has been playing fantastic this tournament, don't get me wrong, but he's had that little bit of luck that you're going to need to push through, and that was well engineered. You know, we definitely examined a bunch of different lines with do you lava burst this, do you lava burst that, do you lava burst the face.
You would have this exact scenario if you would lava burst the Direwolf Alpha the previous turn, right?
Right, but the important thing is that he recognized that he had that additional turn to wait. He didn't have to make that decision yet. He could wait for one more turn of information from his deck, and then when he got the Doomhammer, it was like, okay, well now I see the line, and then he still had that free turn. And anytime you win the game as an aggro deck, 1 turn before you die, you've probably played it well.
Yep, that's correct.
Raven, what's up, dude?
Wow, what an end. It was kind of crazy, the whole set overall, but what really made me laugh was as Fr0zen joins us, like, I heard you actually talking to yourself while you were playing the game, and as it got to the end, it was like, oh, how do I set this up? And it's like, right, Lava Burst the dog, hit this with Doomhammer, draw Rockbiter, and you know what? You set it up, you knew you were out, and it happened. So congratulations as you put your spot in the final.
Thank you very much. Yeah, throughout that last game, I was like, how do I set this up? I don't have my Doomhammer. Where's my Doomhammer? Where's my Doomhammer? Until I finally drew it, and then I saw the opportunity. Before that, I was like, if I draw top deck the Lightning Bolt and he taps, maybe I could go Spell Power Totem, Lava Burst, Lightning Bolt.
We missed that.
To set it up, but that's why I didn't kill the Direwolf earlier.
Okay, very good point.
And then, of course, I drew the Doomhammer and I figured out how to set up the win.
Yeah, I think the important thing is, like, Lothar and I were discussing, you can Lava Burst the dog that turn, but you recognize that you had that 1 turn, right? You knew what your clock was. So you're like, okay, I can see 1 more draw, and then based on that information, I can, like, set it up from there. And then when you got the Doomhammer, like you said, you're like, okay, I see the line. You just draw Rockbiter, easy game. Yeah, it's very well played, very impressive.
Yeah, being able to actually, that game looked quite grim for quite a while, but being able to just identify your out and how you're going to win the game is something that, gets you to a place like this. So how confident are you going into the finals?
I'd use also someone I lost in the Swiss round. So, I mean, I beat the last person that lost in the Swiss round, so This time I feel like now that I know his deck list, I'll make some changes maybe, and then figure out a better strategy to beat him.
Okay, brilliant. So we'll be giving you some time to just take a minute or so just to relax before we get into the grand finals. So it's going to be a 15-minute break, guys, but stick around as we bring you the grand finals. So don't go anywhere.